He is the ringsidereporter.com, and we want to get his thoughts on this, and he's with us courtesy of the CarQuest hotline. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Hey, what's going on? How's it going?
Going good. With that big win for Alvarez, and what a terrific punch that he manages to win this fight. And now, I was curious about all this bit about they'll strip him in 15 days. I'm like, wow, that's coming out the day after the fight, that he'll get stripped in 15 days if they don't make progress on the next fight. I don't know, what's your thought on that, and who's in the stronger negotiating position? Is it Alvarez with his popularity?
Alvarez is the star right now of boxing, with Mayweather being retired, and Manny Pacquiao has lost a lot of his luster. He's still, a good draw, but not as good as Alvarez is right now at the current time. So, this is how boxing has always worked. We've seen this several times, where the more popular fighter is going to dictate terms to the less popular fighter. And this is nothing new. Whether or not the WBC is going to strip Canelo Alvarez if he does not fight Gennady Golovkin, that still remains to be seen, because if you go back in history, we remember when Sergio Martinez was the WBC middleweight champion, and then actually he got stripped, and then Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fought for his title, and then they just basically appeased Martinez and gave him the diamond belt. And it took about 4 fights before Martinez and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. actually fought, because they were supposed to fight for the longest time, and they dragged that out. So, judging by the WBC's history, it's not out of the realm of possibility to suggest that they may drag this out. And who knows, maybe Alvarez, after the fight, they asked him a question about Golovkin, and he said he doesn't fight for belts, he fights for honor. So maybe this belt doesn't mean that much to Alvarez, because again, he is the star, he's the draw, he's making money regardless if it's a title fight or not. So he's making the fight big. The title's not making the fight big, at least in his opinion. That's from what I gather from this interview.
Okay, Joe, typically in this kind of a situation where the fan interest is a bit lopsided, certainly based on pay-per-view sales, is he going to get the lion's share of the purse then?
Absolutely, he'll get the bigger purse. He'll get the bigger share of the pay-per-view. And once again, this is nothing new. It's not always about who's the better fighter. It's about who's the bigger draw. We know that. I mean, this is a unique sport, and that's how the sport has been for the longest time. So, I don't know. Canelo's people understand this, but I don't think Golovkin's people understand this. And it's so funny, because Golovkin's trainer, Abel Sanchez, trained a fighter back in the day, Terry Norris, who was the junior middleweight champion, which that weight class is fought at 154 pounds. And he fought Meldrick Taylor, who was the welterweight champion. And Meldrick Taylor moved up, but they fought that fight at a catch weight of 151.5 pounds. So it's kind of odd that Sanchez, who was actually involved in a catchweight fight with one of his fighters, Terry Norris, back in the 90s, who was considered one of the best pound-for-pound fighters at that time, so he agreed to a catchweight. And we can go back in history, and we can look at Bernard Hopkins fighting Oscar De La Hoya at a catchweight as well, at 157 pounds. So again, this is nothing new. This is the norm in the sport. So I'm not saying that Golovkin should come down all the way to 155, but definitely there has to be some middle ground here. And if Alvarez wants to fight this fight at a catchweight, then maybe they should do it at 157, possibly. So I don't think that Golovkin has any leverage in these negotiations whatsoever, in my opinion.
Right. But the things coming out of his camp don't seem to make that reasonable. And I don't know, as Alvarez says, look, he doesn't seem opposed, at least if you believe his comments, at fighting at 160. Is that a big disadvantage for him? And what would be if you chose or asked Alvarez and his people, perfect weight, what do you want to fight at? What would it be?
Well, I would like to see the fight as a fan being fought at 160. But I realize, and I think they realize deep down inside, that Golovkin is a real big challenge, and it's a fight that they could possibly lose. So they need to get every advantage they can. If I'm in Canelo's camp, And I know Canelo can make 155, and I know he can rehydrate up to 168 or 170 the night of the fight. But I know that maybe his opponent would not be able to do that comfortably. I would try to utilize that advantage if I had. Manny Pacquiao's utilized that advantage in fights before with catch weights. I hate to keep sounding redundant, but it's nothing new. So I don't know. I think right now emotions are high, and Canelo said some things after the fight, like, I'll fight him anywhere, any place, any time, at any weight. But when he sits down with his team is going to have an input on what goes on, and they're going to influence his decision making. And I believe they're going to try to get every possible advantage that they can. And if the catch weight is part of that advantage, then they're going to utilize that, in my opinion.
Well, maybe Golovkin's group, when they find out that he's going to get 30% of the purse or whatever the division will end up being, then maybe that'll be a deal breaker for them, because, as you said, they don't seem to get it. They don't seem to get the leverage situation here.
Yeah, they really don't. And once again, Abel Sanchez, when they were talking about fighting Andre Ward, when that fight was proposed, he said that Golovkin was the name. He was the bigger draw, and when Ward didn't have that same drawing power that Golovkin had. So that's why that fight never happened. So, they seems to believe they didn't need Ward, and Alvarez believes that he doesn't need Golovkin, and Golovkin needs Alvarez. So the tables are turned. So they should just understand the situation. And, Golovkin is not a huge middleweight anyways. I mean, Hopkins was a big middleweight. He was 6'1". He turned pro at light heavyweight. And if he can squeeze his frame down to 157, I don't see why Golovkin could not. And Golovkin, their camp actually made a statement that they would fight Floyd Mayweather at 154 if that fight was proposed. So why not fight Alvarez at 156, 157? I mean, he's the name. I mean, he's carrying the mantle right now. He's taking the crown from Floyd Mayweather. Is he as big as Floyd Mayweather is? No. But he's the next best thing right now that boxing has to offer in terms of Floyd Mayweather, an alternative to Floyd Mayweather. So I think it's pretty reasonable for them to do what they're doing, whether as a fan I like it or not. From a businessman standpoint, I have to agree with it.
Well, let me ask you how big this fight would be in your mind. I mean, clearly it's not Mayweather-Pacquiao, which is still, I think, the biggest grossing fight ever, right? I mean, and it may be for a long time. But is this fight going to be relatively large, though? I mean, it seems to me that Alvarez, he's got kind of the look. I mean, he's kind of a glamour guy. I would think there would be the potential for him to grow in terms of his marketability.
I think in terms of, lucrative type fights, in terms of, monetary value, this is probably the biggest fight. It's the most lucrative fight. In terms of competitiveness, I think Andre Ward versus Sergey Kovalev is the best fight from a competitive standpoint, from an intriguing standpoint. Because quite frankly, Golovkin's going to be a huge favorite in this fight, probably at least 3 or 4 to 1 against Alvarez. So
regardless of what weight they fight at?
Yeah, I think if this fight, I think he'll still be the favorite regardless. And I just think that this fight is more of an event as opposed to a boxing fans type of fight. This is not the most competitive fight that can be made in boxing right now. I think the most competitive fight that can be made in boxing right now, as I said, is Andre Ward versus Sergey Kovalev. So I'm more excited about that fight than this fight. And, I think, Alvarez has improved, and I'm starting to change my mind on, how competitive the fight will be. Maybe he will put up a fight. Maybe he'll last to the end. But I have a hard time seeing him win this fight against Golovkin, as much as he's improved. I just think Golovkin is on another level right now. He's on another stratosphere in that middleweight division, and I think everyone else is levels below him, including Alvarez.
Wow, that's interesting, because I don't know what it is. Why is Golovkin's marketability, personality, why is it so low? Is the guy just kind of a drippy human being that can't kind of put it across to the masses, or what?
I don't think it's low. I think they're doing a great job with him. Obviously, he doesn't speak English, but neither does Alvarez. But Alvarez just crossed over. I mean, as you said, he's got the look. He's got the big promoter behind him in Golden Boy Promotions. And he's being groomed and marketed as the next Oscar De La Hoya. So that blueprint has already been laid out. He's got a lot of endorsements. When Golovkin has endorsements as well. I don't think Golovkin is a total unknown. I mean, he's known in New York. A lot of Mexican fans like him, but he's just not Alvarez. It's just the way it is. I mean, you're going to have guys who are known, but then you're going to have guys who are just crossover stars. And Alvarez is a crossover star. Golovkin, whether or not he can be, that remains to be seen. I'm not ruling that out. Maybe in time he can. If he beats Alvarez, maybe that will be a big feather in his cap, and it may help him in that regard of becoming more popular. But Alvarez is he's just a superstar right now, and anyone other than Floyd Mayweather, I think he's the face of boxing right now. And even Floyd Mayweather himself has said that Alvarez is the new face of boxing, and he has no problem with that, passing the torch to a fighter like Canelo Alvarez.
You wonder then if there's really, if your opinion on the relative merits of the fighters, just from the inside the ring perspective, is shared by Alvarez's team. Why wouldn't you duck that fight until he's maybe a little more experienced, a little older? He's quite a bit younger than Golovkin, right?
Correct. He's about 24 years old, and Golovkin's closing in on 35. He's 34 right now. He should be 35 probably in about 6 months. So, I mean, he's 10 years older than Alvarez, sure. and if you really look at it, Alvarez can only get better, whereas Golovkin can probably only get worse at this stage. Right.
So to me, if I'm them, and I agree with, if I'm one of his people on his team, and I share your thought that Canelo Alvarez at this stage is not that competitive with Golovkin, why the heck would you fight him? Why wouldn't you just fight other people? Say you can't get an agreement. You can always claim he's ducking you, on and on and on, but why not wait a couple of years for that fight?
Well, I would do that if I was in Alvarez's. I would do the same thing, but what's happening now is, will the Mexican fans turn on Alvarez? Will they call him a coward? Because Mexican fighters are known as being warriors. They don't run from any fighter. They'll fight anyone. Julio Cesar Chavez has done that. Salvador Sanchez has done that. All the great Juan Manuel Marquez has done that. Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, all the great Mexican fighters fought everyone. They never ducked anyone. So, they could shame Alvarez into taking this fight. Because if you listen to that interview after the fight, he was upset. He seemed like he was frustrated. And I think, fighters do read the headlines and they do listen to what's being said about them. And he's a Mexican fighter, and it is what it is. That's the mantle of a Mexican fighter. That's how a Mexican fighter is branded, based upon being a warrior, having a lot of heart. And if he can't live up to those expectations, especially in that Mexican fighter culture, then this could work against him in terms of popularity, and it could damage his reputation, possibly. I don't know that for sure, but that's a possibility.
Well, you have to get. I mean, if that's the case, you keep more sophistication on your team, because it's all perception.
Yes.
It's how it's presented. You could make out that Golovkin is being disrespectful. The demands are not that you'd love this fight, but you can't take it because this guy doesn't get the realities. I mean, there's a way to present that, I think, that would take some sophistication, but I think it's avoidable to have. You can avoid having that perception that he's a coward, and that's really what that's where your team takes over, right?
Exactly. That my strategy would be. Again, I'm not in the camp, but I'll put my team Alvarez hat on right now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to make outrageous demands from that camp. And I'm not going to make all of them known, but I'm just going to say, hey, we sat down with Golovkin. We put the terms on the table for him, and he won't accept the fight. So we're not ducking Golovkin. Golovkin doesn't want to fight us because he's not accepting our terms. And again, a lot of boxing fans are going to be listening to this and be saying, Habeeb, what's going on? Why are you saying these things? You're supposed to be a hardcore fan. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to look at this objectively from a business standpoint, and I'm going to put myself in Alvarez's camp's shoes, then this is what I would do. And I think that's what's going to happen. They're going to continue to play the role like, he needs us, we don't need him. We offered him a deal. If he doesn't accept it, then that's on him. He's the one that doesn't want the fight, and that's how I would try to flip it.
Me too. Joe Habeeb, ringsidereporter.com. Let me get this. Is there any chance in your mind, with so much money, and I'm hearing, it's hard for me to believe that it could still generate another big purse, but is there any chance we see another Mayweather-Pacquiao, or is that absolutely gone?
I believe it will happen, possibly in September.
Are these guys going to pick up another 50 or 70 million each off of this?
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That is really something. In my mind, I would. There's other fights I'd way rather see than that one at this point. Yep.
Well, again, like I've told everyone, I'm an addict. I buy them all, so I could see myself buying the Mayweather Pacquiao too. They got me.
Well,
I'm hooked.
It's your job. I mean, you're one of the very happy people that can write off the expense of those things. So, well done, Joe. Always enjoy talking with you. Thanks much.
Hey, thank you so much. I enjoy it.
Joe Habeeb.
Thank you much, Joe. Have a good day.
All right, thank you, buddy.